There's a man who contradicts. Wait, he's the type of guy who tell you there's no first place, but he's part of a race.
And one of the biggest issues I do see there, though, would be ownership. Is that something that you've put a lot of thought into? And not personal ownership alone, because what you said there made sense, but ownership, for instance, of the land and so on. That always seems to come up as a massive issue. Have you got any ideas or thoughts on that, even if you're off the cuff right now?
Yeah, no, it is something I've thought a lot about, and again, that's a reason why that is part of that three-part agreement where I focus on rightful ownership as its own separate thing. Yeah, I mean, basically, property rights, and this is something that a lot of people that are into property rights don't really realise, but property rights, if applied consistently, doesn't actually allow for land ownership. Because, as I say, you acquire rightful ownership of property by creation of voluntary trade. But it all needs to start from creation. You need to, if you build a house, you can sell it to somebody else so they then own it, like I say, voluntary trade, but it needs to start off as a creation. Now, the problem with land is it's basically part of our natural environment and part of our shared environment. No one created the land itself. So no one can really claim ownership under property rights. It doesn't actually fit like that. But they don't actually need land ownership for property ownership, because let's say I'm just standing in the middle of a field, like an unowned field, just like, the commons, if you like.
Okay.
I'm just standing there, right? I'm not claiming ownership over that land, but the very area where I am standing is my rightful domain while I stand there, just because I'm occupying it with my body, which I do own. So I don't own the land, but I own my body, and while I occupy this space with my body, it would be an act of aggression for someone to come in and push me off that spot of land. Like I said,
Yeah, I've discussed this topic many times.
Yeah, so my point is you don't actually need land ownership to have domain over land where your property is, because you just apply the same principles you would with you standing in a spot as you do with your property standing in a spot. So just as I can have rightful domain, which would serve very much like land ownership in a sense, in regards to I have that exclusive domain of it, but it's only while I stand there. Likewise, I have exclusive domain over the land where my property sits, but only while my property sits there. Now, the reason why this is important, because some people might think, well, if it serves the same as land ownership, then what's the difference between domain and ownership? Well, the reason why it's important is because I don't actually own the land, so that my domain is dependent on me occupying that area with something I do own, i.e. either myself or my property, whether it's a house or a factory I built, or doesn't matter what it is. But the point is I don't own the land, I own the property, and I just have temporary dominion. The reason why this is important is because a lot of quote-unquote land ownership that exists today is completely arbitrary. Basically, some rich person, either through violent conquest initially, getting it rights from the government or whatever, but they basically just pointed to a massive spot and just said, we own all of this.
Absolutely.
They haven't, and they've not qualified their ownership through property rights, where they, like you would if you built a house and you own that house, and then, like I say, you have dominion over the land.
You're making use of it as well. I mean, like, for instance, the owner of Walmart owns a big swathe of the Grand Canyon. And it's like, how? Why? It's like, what's the point? And what means that in the future, if there's some kind of change in the land mass or whatever, no one else can use that part of the land because he owns it.
There's a man who contradicts. Wait, he's the type of guy who tell you there's no first place,